Alright, so in the last video we left off essentially with a play button that will move with us, but we haven't really finished layer 3 yet. And when I say layer 3, I'm referring to this schematic here. We're referring to layer 1 being the background, layer 2 being the scrollable content. Layer 3 is a play button that scrolls with the scrollable content, but is technically a separate layer. And that allows us to let the play button stop scrolling at the top. Layer 4 is these two, back button and the more button, or the ellipses. So they stack on top like this to give us this view. And what we need to finish up here is we need to finish up this part of things. What's this? We need to finish up creating a button that moves upwards and animates like so. Stops at the top and expands and contracts according to how far we've scrolled. So let's go ahead and do that next. So if we look here, what we have in this area, we have a text that says play. But what we can do is we can actually embed, what we need is we really need an if-then statement. And we need an if-then statement that says, if we are somewhere down here, we haven't finished scrolling all the way to the top, then make it the word play. But once we get to the top, change that to the actual play button logo, or the little play image, the play button fill image, you know? So in order to do that, we need to create an if statement that is measuring our offset. Because if you pay attention to this yellow number here, what we're saying is we want, when that offset becomes negative 300 or even more negative, so less than negative 300, that's the point at which you want it to switch from the word to the image button, okay? So we need to create an if statement, and that if statement needs to say if, remember, that is play button underscore offset. So if play button underscore offset, okay, if that is equal to, or I should say if that's greater than, negative 300, then what we need to show is this, text play. And if it isn't, in all other cases, aka if we are, so if in any other case than that, once we're in the normal range of scrolling, we actually want to display the image, and the name of that image, we can go over to SF symbols to figure out that name. We want the play button. We want this play.fill, okay? So we want the SF symbol with the name play.fill, okay? And all these attributes of foreground color, frame, background, corner radius, the font, all that stuff that pertains to the actual green portion of this button, well, we want it to apply to both the text or the image. The only thing that's going to change is this width of 240, but we'll get to that. But other than that one thing, all of these need to pertain to that button. So we need a foreground of white. If we look at what we're trying to make here, foreground color of white, we're going to need that no matter what. Font, we're going to need to be the same no matter what. We need the corner radius. The corner radius tells us how rounded this edge is. We need it to be 25 no matter what. We need the background color to be constant. We need the foreground color to be constant. We need the shadow constant. The only thing we're going to be changing is its width as we slowly make this thing smaller and smaller. So what we need to do then is we need to make all these apply to a parent container to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an H-stack, and that H-stack is actually going to encompass whatever comes out of this if statement. So either it's going to be a text that says play, or it's going to be an image that has play.fill icon. But no matter what, all of these things will end up affecting the outcome of this. So if I scroll up, we get exactly what we're looking for now. Right there, switches from play to that image, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the text here really quickly. I'm going to re-indent everything. So I'm going to click Control-I. Now everything is better indented again, okay? So you can see better that this foreground color and the frame and the background, all these attributes from here to here, they relate to this H stack, not specifically to text play and not specifically to image. So the foreground color, that does affect those two, but that's because they're within the H stack that this actually refers to. So the next thing we need to do in this animation, so we can call it layer 3 complete, is we want layer 3 to start contracting right around, so I would say probably around here, around, let's say 150, around negative 150 to negative 300. We need it to start contracting. Okay, so in order for it to contract, what we need to do is we almost need to create a math function. Okay, so I'm going to create a new function. I'm actually going to go ahead and minimize my entire Z stack that encompasses everything. And inside of content item viewer, inside of this, what I'm going to do, so I'm going to create a new function. And that function is going to be called, let's call it get play button width. Okay, and play button width is going to return to us a CG float. Okay, and essentially what we need to do, I'm going to start by just giving a default value so we can get rid of these errors. Okay, I'm going to say it's going to return 240 to us. So I'll save it. I'll open the Z stack, and now instead of saying the width of this is 240, I'm going to say the width of this is equal to the outcome of this function. So I'm going to say the width is now equal to get play button width, and what that means is that when it tries to determine how wide this is going to be, it's going to run this function. And right now, this function will always tell it, make me 240. So no matter what, this is always going to be 240 right now because the outcome of this function is always 240. So you can follow this width, you can follow this like a little trail all the way to this function. Okay? So what I need to do now is I need to create the math that'll allow it to slowly contract up until negative 300. Okay? So let's just work out the math. Now we're looking at a math problem. We're not really looking at a code realistically. So what we need to do is we need to say from anything that is greater than negative 150, just leave it at 240. So we'll say if the play button offset is greater than negative 150, then just return 240. Okay? And that makes sense. Well, it's upset because I didn't say what to do in all the other cases. So I'll just continue to say return 240. But that'll change. So if we have a play button offset of greater than negative 150, I'll hit resume, then no matter what, it's going to show us a width of 240. Okay? So to make sure that actually works, what I'll do is I'll have this one say return 50. And you'll see right away that as long as this number up here is greater than 150, it'll be 240 width. But the minute I hit negative 150 and I cross over, it's going to shrink. But it's very sudden. We don't like that, right? But what we do know is that we need this size at the top. Okay? So the minute it hits negative 300, we definitely need it to be that size. So why don't we say if play button offset is less than negative 300, then definitely make it this number right here, 50y. Okay? Now it needs to know what to do in all other cases. So what it's asking me is, let's go ahead and say return 100 just for now, okay? It's trying to understand. It understands, okay, now that I'm greater than negative 150, I know that it's supposed to be 240. And I know that at the top here, and negative, let's say less than or equal to. Less than or equal. Now it knows that when I get to the top, I definitely need to be a tiny button. But this area right here is where we need to put the logic in for the middle the gradual piece of it. The piece that looks like this. You see that nice gradual transition? That's the math we need to implement. So what we can do is we can say in this range, we'll say width, var width is going to, for now, we're going to say it's going to be a CG float, and it's going to be equal to the following. Our width needs to be 50. So let's work out the math on our own. It's going to be 50. It's at least 50. And the rest of it, so the rest of the difference between 50 and 240 is going to be 190. And so we'll do 190, and that'll be multiplied by whatever fraction of the distance we've traveled. So whatever fraction of the distance we traveled from here to here. So if we've only traveled 1 pixel, then we have a distance of 150 pixels to travel, and across those 150 pixels is where we need to make that change of 190 pixels of width. So we'll say it's going to be our width is going to be equal to 50 plus 190, and then we know that we need to travel 150 pixels between the time the animation starts and the animation ends. So we'll say 150. Okay. And the last piece that we're going to be tracking is when we go from here upwards. So what we'll do is we'll say -1. This is just going to be the math, okay? Not necessarily coding. So -1 times the play button offset would be minus 150. And if we run it, it should give us the exact animation we're looking for. But sorry, it's not working because we need to actually return that width. So we'll say return width. There we go. Well, if you look at that, we actually got it backwards. So we just need to do one little piece here. We can even just say divided by -150. We just got the whole thing backwards. Oh. This is just a small little math error. So it's going to be 190 240 minus is what we're looking for here. There we go. So it's just a little math there. You kind of just need to fiddle with these numbers till it makes sense to you. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, you know, from any scrollable area up until I hit at least an offset of -150, don't change anything. Make it a width of 240. But the minute I hit 150, start that transition. Slowly move me towards a circle up until -300. So I said, once we hit this -150 here, then the width is going to be equal to 240 minus this 190. And the 190 is the difference between our absolute smallest height and our absolute biggest height, because 240 minus 50, okay? So that's 190. That's 240 minus 50. So it's 190. And it's trying to understand, well, what fraction of 190 am I supposed to subtract? So when we're all the way down here, well, you're supposed to subtract all of it, because realistically, we haven't scrolled at all. And when you come all the way up, you subtract none of it because we haven't really scrolled much. But when I get all the way up here, we need to subtract the whole 190 because we are officially all the way at the top. So it should be 50. If you have any questions about that or the math, please feel free to shoot me a message. And the last thing we'll be doing in the next video is we are just going to be creating the back button and the more button. All right? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.